So what are utility pedals and how can you use them in your rig to come up with new and creative sounds? Today I wanted to talk about that. And first off, what is a utility pedal? Often it's something that to some people might seem like it costs a lot of money to accomplish a very simple task, but it can be something like an EQ pedal, a little volume pedal, or an expression. I can get to that in a second. They're actually the same thing if you know how to do it. Something like an ABY switch. There's stuff that can switch between different input levels for volume, ground lift, isolation, and you can sum stuff into a mono channel, or you can take a mono channel and split it into many paths and then bring it back together. I'll run through a lot of different products that I'm a fan of. Some of them I have, some of them I don't have, and I'll try and give you a couple ideas for how you can use them in your own music creation. The first thing is just a very simple thing. It's a volume pedal, and if you don't have one yet, I recommend getting one. Not this one. This one sucks. But a volume pedal can be a very useful thing in your rig. And you might say, I have a volume on my guitar. Why would I use a volume pedal? You can put it in different locations in your rig. For example, after the overdrives. If you're turning your volume down on your guitar going into an overdriven signal, you're not actually getting a change in volume. You're getting a change in overdrive. If you want to change the volume while still keeping the same amount of intensity on the overdrive, put the volume pedal after the drive. You can use a volume pedal in a stereo chorus rig. A lot of stereo chorus pedals will run a vibrato channel on one side and your completely dry signal the other side. When they come together and the audience hears it together, that's where your chorus effect comes in. And if you want to control the amount of chorus you're getting or the intensity, simply put a volume control on the chorus affected side, and you can control how much of that chorus sound you're getting put back together. So if you don't want to spend money on something big like that first one I showed you, this is a great alternative. It's by a company called This One's Mine. It's like $20. It's passive, and it's literally just a simple guitar potentiometer that would be on your guitar in the volume control. So that's the control, and then an input and an output. It's very simple, and you can still use it on your pedal board too if you put it at a wide location where you can get to it with your foot and roll it with the side. That's easy, but you can also use it as an expression pedal, and pretty much any passive volume pedal can be used as an expression control. So all you'll need for that is a Y cable, which is a TRS, a stereo plug that splits into two different cables, which are each TS. So you'll plug each of the TS in here on either side and run the TRS back into your delay pedal, the reverb pedal, whatever you're using this to control it with. And this just acts as a control voltage kind of thing, and it sends, whatever message that pedal is looking to receive. And going along with an expression control, everybody needs to have a single click foot switch that just sends a straight impulse to whatever pedal that's looking to receive that instant impulse. It's a very simple thing. You just plug a regular cord into it and you send that impulse and the pedal reacts to it in whatever way. It's another thing that should not cost a lot of money. Some people are charging like $50 for one of these. Check out Saturn Works pedals if you haven't yet. I own two of their products and they're always great. Something else going along with volume control. This is a volume switcher. And this might be useful if you've got two instruments that are at vastly different input levels. So if you want to use the same rig and you're playing a guitar with single coils and a guitar with humbuckers in the same set, for example, set the guitar with humbuckers a little bit lower. So on this green side, when you hit that side, it's going to be sending a little bit less signal than it would get. And when you switch to your guitar with single coils, you're sending your full max sound. So put this at the beginning of your chain, and then after this, whichever guitar you switch between and the channels, you can make sure that your rig's getting the same volume, so your front of house engineer, or if you don't have one, you don't have to worry about what the audience is hearing at different levels and how you're sitting in the mix. It's just a problem solver pedal that it's another useful thing to have. This one's made by a company called Nose, and it's passive, although it does have an input to control the LEDs, so you know which side you're on, but you don't need that. If you want something a little bit more advanced and you got the money for it, you can check out the Gig Rig. They have a product called the 123. You got 3 different volume options and a very nice foot switch and some nice lighting on it that shows you where you're at with that pedal. It does the same thing pretty much. Another great pedal to have, which is very simple, again, is something like an EQ pedal. Everyone knows the Boss G7. That was the original one. This one's made by Joyo. It's like $30. I've had it 5 years though, and it's never failed me. And it's just very useful in different ways. If you want to cut through a little bit in the mix, boost your mids, If you've got a guitar with a really annoying high sound, cut some highs out of it. If you're playing something like an electric violin where you're getting a lot of low frequency noise with the bow, cut the low frequency out. It's just a very useful thing to have, whether it goes on your rig or not. So you can use this in a recording studio situation or in live situations. It's great for everything. Something cool you might be able to do with it is just run a reverb pedal into it and then set just a super weird EQ on it. So you're getting a unique sound out of it that most people would probably not identify as a guitar. And anyway, I think this pedal, I think I might use this for its own video. So if you're watching this in the future and you're interested in learning a little bit more about how you can use an EQ pedal, check out this video that I've linked up here. So a quick mention before I start going too far down the rabbit hole here is the HX Stomp in the middle of my rig. It's still a relatively new pedal for me, but I'm discovering so many cool things you can do with it. And routing different signals, routing stuff in stereo, summing it down to mono again, and running an auxiliary channel into it for different instruments or backing tracks. You can run a wet-dry rig with it. You can run one side with a volume pedal and whatever. I use an Expression and another Saturn Works tap tempo / whatever you need it to be pedal with it. And it's just super useful. But without going down the rabbit hole on that, I'll show you a couple standalone pedals that you can use to kind of get the same effects. This is one that I own that I haven't used very much, admittedly. It's the Radial Engineering Big Shot. It's an ABY pedal. Originally, I had bought it because I was using a Fender Blues Deluxe that would have an intermittent issue where it would just, when it would get to a certain temperature, if you were playing loud enough, it would just cut out, stop working. So on gigs where I had that happen, it was really annoying. I would just have to wait for it to come back on, basically, when it cooled down. And I started bringing a second amp along, and instead of waiting for the amp to fail and then having to plug into my other amp, which didn't sound as good. So admittedly, this is something that I've had for like 5 years now, and I haven't used it all that much. But every now and then, I come across a problem that this is the solution to, and for that reason, I'm glad I have it, and I'll never get rid of it. It functions as an AB pedal, which is what I bought it to do, but you can also use it as a Y pedal. So you plug into one input, and then two outputs. You can run always on, or you can toggle between either or AB output. And that's really useful. For example, if you're running a wet-dry sound, you can choose just the wet sound or just the dry sound, or you can run them both together. Or you can run them both together and then switch between turning your wet sound on and off. And of course it works with trails too, so you don't have to worry about your delay cutting out immediately when you press the button. It'll just decay because it won't be sending signal into the delay pedal. And since this is passive, you can use it the reverse way too. So you can actually plug in stereo. You can plug two inputs into it. If you have a synth or a guitar rig, you can switch between them, or use a stereo rig into this to sum to one output and send that to the front of house. So it's simple, or to your guitar amp. It also has a tuner output on it, which is always on, and just a really, really cool pedal with a lot of different options. I'm going to jump on my computer now and show you a couple other pedals that I don't own, but that might be useful for you if you've got some ideas for a cool rig to come up with. So we'll stick with Radial Engineering right now. The first pedal we'll look at is the Shotgun. You can run mono or stereo input, up to 4 outputs. You got a ground lift and a phase inversion switch for each one, and that'll cover any issues that you run into on the road with any sort of rig. If you want to carry 4 Fender Twins into the bar, be my guest, you can do that with this. Or if you want to give the front of house engineer a very simple dry tone, just like from an amp processor or digital modeling system, and say you don't like the sound of it, but you want to keep it simple for the sound guy, you can use a live amp on stage. You can split the signal, so you're enjoying the sound of your guitar amp that you know and love, and you're sending that digital processing unit, and who the heck cares what the audience is hearing. You can do that if you want to. Keep looking here. This one's a really cool one by Radial. It's basically an effects loop, and you can switch between different loops in your rig if you want to. You can do stereo even. And say you've got a ton of delay and reverb pedals in one side that you want to use, only occasionally for certain textures, and you want your dry sound to pass through unaffected, and you want to turn everything on and off with one switch. That's what this can be used for. So you're playing clean, and then you get to a real cool spacey part, hit the switch, run through all your billion reverb and delay pedals, and you're getting a cool sound. When that's over, switch back, and it's instantly back to your dry sound. Just one switch instead of turning pedals on and off a bunch. And there's a whole lot of different ways you can use that too. That's just one example. So going along with the first radial engineering pedal that I showed you in person, JHS has an option also. This one's active, so it uses power to show you what the heck channel you're on if you're like me and your short-term memory is terrible. The light will help you a little bit maybe. This is cheaper than the radial engineering, I think also. I'm using Sweetwater site, by the way, just because the JHS site is down, but by the time you see it, check it out on the JHS site and it'll probably be back up. So that's an ABY pedal. There's an AB box, which does the same thing, just without the Y option. So it's either or instead of having the option of both. And then going into what I said you could do with the Big Shot also, you can run it backwards if you want, or you can run it going into 2 channels. This will take your mono input and send it to 2 channels always, and it'll do that nicely with a buffering circuit. And if you want to bring it back down to mono, you plug in 2 inputs into this pedal. If you want to run your stereo rig back down to mono, that'll do this for you. And sometimes that's important to have a properly summing pedal because you can run into issues when you're running 2 lines backwards into the pedal that I showed you before. This is just a standalone buffer. If you want to throw a buffer at the beginning of your chain to help out with tone loss as you're running through your million different pedals. This is a cool one that JHS came out with. It's called the Switchback, and you can switch between different loops on it. So you've got your guitar input, a single remote if you want to switch between it with your foot instead of using the switcher here. So guitar through to the amp, and then you've got your send into the first loop, return, send into the second loop, and return. So if you have 2 distinctly different overdrive sounds that you use multiple pedals for, and you don't want to tap dance every time you switch between it, this will do it with 1 simple foot switch. Or if you're like me and you use a very small rig and you keep some pedals on the inside of the board where you don't have access to them, you can just use this as a remote to access multiple pedals at once. So you're keeping the size down. And here's another simple one. It's just a kill switch. No need for explanation there. But hopefully I've showed you something that sparks some ideas for you to use. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you found something useful. Make sure you hit the like down below. And especially if I've forgotten anything, or if you have other unique ways of using utility pedals, make sure you leave me a comment down below so I can be informed as well. I'm super interested in everything, the ideas that you guys come up with. I'm sure there's plenty of stuff that I've missed as well. It was just a little introduction. If you're not aware of what a utility pedal is or how it can be used, hopefully I've sparked some interest in you, maybe some ideas you can come up with for creative uses in your own rig. Make sure you check out the video I did a couple weeks ago now with the Electro-Harmonix pitchfork and how I used a utility pedal to turn this into a whammy. Basically like the Digitech whammy, but it sounds much better and it tracks much better. Stay tuned for more videos like the one coming out with the EQ pedal, so I can show you how you can use the EQ pedal in different ways. So stay tuned for all that. Hit the subscribe button if you're interested, and I'll see you next time.